So last night you should have read this fleeting world, pages 41 to 47. So you want to go ahead and label your notes just that, this fleeting world, pages 41 to 47. Now, before we get too far into it, I just want to make sure we're kind of on the same page with some abbreviations. BCE means before the Common Era. It is the new version of BC. And CE means Common Era. It's the new version of AD. World historians have kind of gotten away from both BC and AD because they have Judeo-Christian references. They're kind of not all inclusive. They kind of only concentrate on the Western world rather than concentrating on the Middle East and Africa and Southeast Asia and East Asia, places that don't have a Judeo-Christian background. So one of the things that you'll start to see here in this book, and then also in your textbook, is that shift to BCE and CE. So we're kind of taking the next step here. We're starting to build a little bit. Where we had previously villages, now we're going to start to build to cities and states. And again, keep in mind the video game analogy. A place cannot develop cities and states if they haven't mastered the village level. So you're going to have some places like, for example, that they only get to village. And you're also going to have some places that don't get to village at all, that they kind of are stuck at the whole hunter-gatherer-forager type of level. And that's oftentimes because of poor geography. Doesn't allow them to develop agriculture like it does in some of the other parts. So just like Afro-Eurasia was the region of the world, was the world zone that was the first to get agriculture, so they were the first to go and get agricultural villages, they're going to be the first to get cities and states. Other zones, some will get cities and states, some won't get cities and states at all. Again, and it has to do with, how efficient they're able to farm, or are they able to farm? What causes state building is just simply increasing population. And again, what a state is just simply more people. And if we have more people, we have more problems. And a state is going to intensify all of these problems because we have even more people, and it's going to call for specialized leaders. Cities, bare bones, and states definition. Cities are just simply large communities with a complex internal division of labor. I mean, villages are going to be more complex than a hunter-gatherer-forager society. Cities are going to be more complex than a village society. And the same will also be true of states. They're going to be more complex than cities will be. And the bare bones basic definition of a state is a power structure that rests on systematic and institutionalized coercion as well as popular consent. And again, some of this we'll get into a little bit later. The first cities and states are going to come to exist in regions with largely productive agriculture. Again, we need to have the more food in order to have the more people. If we don't have the more food, we can't have the more people. If we don't have the more people, then we can't grow beyond the village setting to the city or the state setting. And the first of these, again, probably somewhere in that area of the Nile Valley to Mesopotamia. Again, that area that we circled on the map to show where agriculture probably popped up first. And this is around somewhere 3000 BCE. The Americas will get it about 2,000 years later. So again, this is a really slow process. It's not going to be like a light switch where we flip it on, flip it off. You want to think of it more like as a dimmer switch, that things are going to slowly start to come to light in other parts of the world outside of the Nile Valley and Mesopotamia. And in some places, the bulb doesn't work. It's burnt out. We have to have somebody else come in with know-how in order for the bulb to be replaced, in order for agriculture to take place. In some areas, someone has to physically bring it there, usually through invasion. So the spread of agrarian civilizations is going to reflect the increasing scale and density of human populations. Again, as villages become more and more successful, they're able to supply more food, so they're able to support more people, so they just naturally grow. And cities are just simply were and continue to be the most concentrated and largest of all human communities. I mean, cities still exist today. And I think the first thing you think of cities is a lot of people just sort of kind of, packed in there. These larger concentrations of people are supported by the larger concentration of wealth found there. Again, think the only reason why we're able to have these more people is because we have more food, because we have more things. We have more ways that we are able to support or solve the more problems of the more people. And one of the reasons why we're able to use this wealth, and that can be food wealth, that doesn't necessarily have to be like cold hard cash wealth, is caused by the rise of early taxation. And this taxation can be something as basic as everyone is expected to give a specific amount of their crop to go into storage, for the winter, for bad times, for that type of stuff. Eventually here, because these areas are so wealthy and because they're so concentrated, and we also have to maintain order because we have so many people within the city, and because we're so wealthy, we have to defend the city, we start to see the creation of armies. Because let's face it, everybody wants wealth. And if you have a lot of people together, you're going to have a lot of disagreements, and you need some entity to protect the concentration of wealth, but then also to keep the peace. And more often, the armies are going to come into play. They'll be created. Now, some of this early taxation will go to supporting those armies, especially taxation in the form of food. Because keep in mind, these soldiers are going to be non-farmers. Their job is going to be a soldier. So they have to be supported in some way. And the only way that you have an army is if you have a good enough agricultural system to have enough of a surplus so you can support them as non-farmers. The last step here in the agricultural development is going to be the creation of states or imperial states. So we go from villages, and if we're successful enough to master the village level of the game, so to speak, then we grow and eventually we become a city. Well, the next step for the cities is as they grow and as they start to interact with other cities, some of these cities are going to begin to expand and absorb others, creating imperial states, creating what we now define as basically, for lack of a better idea, a state. Now, there's a couple things that will make this possible. And the big one here is going to be improvements in transportation. As we start to become faster at being able to move from point A to point B, the easier it's going to be for us to maintain control over our other cities that are within our empire. This is going to make not only ruling easier, but it's also going to make communication easier as well. And in the long run, these imperial states are going to help to create larger areas of commercial and cultural exchange. One of the big things here, you want to make sure you put a star by this, put it in all caps, underline it, is that trade is a major force in change. One of the things that you will see consistently throughout this entire year is that trade, or the motivation to trade, is one of the big movers and shakers within world history. It's going to give us nearly everything in some way that we're talking about. Everything from religion to the age of discovery to wars, you name it, trade is going to be somewhere in the mix.